Welcome everyone to this week in Svelte number 94. We're getting closer and closer to 100. We don't know yet what we will do for 100 episode, but it will be fun to do something. Please, as usual, let me know if everything is fine, audio-wise. As you may understand, you may see, I'm getting better with my nose. I'm still a bit sick, but it's fine. Okay, today we have a showcase, and a special showcase because it's for people that doesn't love JavaScript, is to use Svelte even in non-JavaScript contexts, specifically servers, but I'm pretty excited about that. And obviously we also have the changelog, which is the main guest, and so let's jump right into it so we can see what's going on. So let's start with version 5.20.1. Fix, ensure AST analysis on Svelte.js module succeeds. So this was a problem, and it was because of a TS expect error. So the point is, sometimes, in the Svelte code base, you can see some TS expect error, TS ignore, stuff like that. And so the point is, we were adding stuff to an object, to a type, and tests were passing because there was this TS expect error. But in reality, we needed to also include that and it was actually my fault, so sorry, but we needed also to include it in the original object. So Simon took the lead, removed the TS expect error, and actually filled the thing so that even in .svelte.js files, the compilation would succeed. Ignore TypeScript abstract methods. So abstract methods are something that you can define in TypeScript, but at runtime they have there's no abstract method in the class when you actually compile TypeScript to JavaScript. And if we were not ignoring that, it would mean that that would have been an actual method created inside a class, which was also problematic because it was also being transformed and stuff like that. So the right fix is to ignore TypeScript abstract method. This is an edge case that I actually found out about. So it was a bug. I don't think anybody actually experienced this bug because it's such an edge case. But basically, the compilation was failing if you had a component that was using $props.id, which is a new rune, inside SvelteHead, or if you were using CSS injected inside a component that was rendered inside SvelteHead. So it's a very narrow edge case, but I was working on a different PR and I figured out, wait, will this fail? And I tried and it was failing, and so I fixed it. But I don't think anybody actually experienced this bug at all. Let's move to 5.20.2, which was 4 days ago. Remove unused options.uid in render. This was a leftover from the PR that opened $props.id rune. Basically, there was this options.uid for render, which provided the user the ability to use a custom UID generator, but it was not used, neither documented, and it was not really useful, so we just removed it. For binding property non-reactive, if binding is a store in a niche. So this was a kind of edge case, but basically, if you were binding to a store, the runtime was actually working because we recognized that it was a store and we were actually invalidating the store after the set. But we were also sending a binding property non-reactive inside, like you will receive a warning. And so like the warning was actually wrong, basically, so we fixed it. Prevent writable store value from becoming a proxy when reassigning using $sign prefix. So by default, we are proxyifying stuff. If you try to assign something to an object, it would become a proxy. But with the store is actually not needed because you actually just update the store. And so we were proxyifying and now we are not. Muted reactive without bind and select autofocus attributes working with function calls. So this was another kind of a weird bug, but basically the muted property, if you were using a function to select, like to set the binding, set the muted property, or if you were using select value and autofocus attribute, basically the problem was that there is a whole dance, I would say, that basically, like, if you are using a function call inside an attribute, instead of continuously calling that function call, we use a derived so that if the value does not change, we are not calling the function again. To do so, before we were doing this by hand basically every time. Recently this was changed so that we pass every value to the template effect, which is the function that is responsible to change the values of the attributes basically. And inside the template effect, we are actually like using a derived to keep track of, like, to prevent calling the function over and over again. So this was it was creating a problem because sometimes, for example, when you want to use value on a select or autofocus, that same derived needed to be also passed to a different function. And so it was trying to access a non-existent $0. And so this was actually fixing it. Ensure input elements and element with dir attribute are marked as non-static. So this is another thing, like I've said it multiple times on stream, but basically in Svelte, if you are writing static HTML, so there's nothing reactive, we actually can detect it, and if it's static, we just render the HTML and then don't touch it ever again. So we basically skip hydration, so there is a bunch of optimization so that hydration is as fast as possible. But this sometimes lead to problem because if you forget, for example, that the dir attribute should be marked as non-static, sometimes like it incurs in bug. But those gets fixed pretty quickly. Fire delegated event on target event, it was disabled in the meantime. This is another very edge case, but like this was actually experienced by someone. And the problem basically here is that, so when we are using event delegation, so this means that instead of registering a bunch of event on every element, we register a single event listener on top, on the body. And we use bubbling to make sure that, like, to invoke the event listener that you register. So when you do button on click, that on click is not actually registered on the button itself, but is registered on the body for every button. So in every button, we have a list of all the event handlers, and when you click on a button, we check and we see, okay, which event we should run given that the user clicked on that button. And one of the conditions to run an event is that the thing should not be disabled. The problem is, what could happen is that by the time it gets to the event listener, a button that actually fired the event could become disabled. But that obviously doesn't make sense, because if you were able to fire an event, then you're not disabled. And so we added an extra an extra condition so that if the target of the click listener is the thing that actually emitted the event, then we still run the event even if the thing is disabled. Pretty nice. So this is all about Svelte. Let's switch to SvelteKit. Add promise return type to the enhance action callback. Okay, nice. Type, new type inference. Change server-side root resolution endpoint. Okay. I'm curious why we needed this. So, server-side root resolution. Sorry. Server-side root resolution is basically... okay, it's just... Okay, that's cool. It's just basically... So, server-side root resolution, it's basically done because right now, if you use client-side root resolution, we send to the client the whole manifest. So you can see that if you have client-side root resolution, if you inspect the network tab, you will see at one point __ manifest.json, if I remember correctly. And that thing is basically the list of all of your routes that we can use for client-side rendering. This was a problem sometimes because people wanted to prevent the user to know that there is a certain route. You shouldn't do security by obscurity, but maybe you don't want people to know about all of your routes, and it's fine. And this was also problematic if you had 1,000 routes, for example, because it was all code that was loaded in advance. So obviously, it was a pretty big JSON file, and you had to load it upfront, even if you never visited a route. So in cases like this, it could be good to have a server-side root resolution, which means that when you are navigating, we do an API call to the server to tell, okay, what's the information that I need, what's the component that I need to render for this route, and stuff like that. So it's an extra API request every time you click, obviously, but it's better if you have a huge amount of routes and stuff like that. So it's good. And before, it was going through _up root and blah, 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 blah. Instead, now it's pathname/root.js, which is more consistent with data.json and avoid problem with cookie. Pretty cool. Let's see if we have something in other. New with adapter Vercel. Fix glob deprecation warnings. Change server-side root resolution endpoint. Yeah, obviously it needed to... Yeah, and that's it. It was a pretty chill week for Svelte, which is fine. So that's the changelog. Let's switch to a quick announcement. You heard it already. I told this so many times, but I will never stop until it happens because I'm so hyped that Spring 2025, May 8 and 9, Svelte Summit, finally in-person event in Barcelona, also online. We will publish something soon. Is the 10th Svelte only conference, is the second one that is live. We also have the list of speakers already, so you can see, there is a couple of to be announced from Scott and Rich, Matthias. We have a bunch of talks. I'm very excited about it. And so if you want to become a sponsor of the conference, please reach out. And these are some past speaker, pretty nice guy. And yeah, the venue is pretty cool. It's at Casarius, Carrer d'Enric Granados. I don't know. I don't speak Spanish. Sorry. I know that is probably terrible, but it's pretty cool. And obviously, I cannot wait to meet you all. And if you want, we are also organizing a workshop there. I will be hosting this workshop. My company, Main Matter, which is also co-organizing this, is hosting this workshop, and it's a pretty cool workshop. It basically teaches you how to migrate from Svelte 4 to Svelte 5, and it will be held the day before of the conference, so May 7, at One Cowork Cathedral. So if you want, please, I would love to teach you Svelte 4 and 5. I think it's a pretty good opportunity to chill out together and also to learn about Svelte 4 and Svelte 5. Again, it's the day before the conference, so if you need to book your trip and you want to participate, please feel free to take into consideration that is the 7th of May. And I think that's it for the announcement. So now let's actually switch to my guest view, because it's time for our community showcase. So let me switch to my guest, where we should have, and you should be able to hear. Sorry, I actually just now realized that I don't know your name, and I'm really sorry. So please introduce yourself. But he is going about to show us a very cool project that he's working on that allows you to have a single web server in Go that actually serves your Svelte components.
Hello, I'm on air. Okay. My name is Alexander. I'm from the UK. I live in the UK. I work for a company called iProof in the UK. We do kind of crazy, interesting software in biometrics, and so check it out, iProof.com. But today I'm going to show you one of my recent projects to blend together Svelte and Go, interestingly. I've been using Svelte for, I don't know, like a couple of years. I love it. I use it in every single project where I need to build some UI on the web. And obviously, I use it in a normal way, like the majority of people do, like Svelte plus SvelteKit. So all together, like the whole bundle, full stack. But in this particular example, we're going to talk about Svelte, just to clear things. Svelte, not SvelteKit. We're going to use Svelte as the UI library. And the server side of this project is written in Go. And we'll come shortly to the reason why Go may be very interesting in this particular application. So I'm going to split my little presentation in three main parts. First, I'll go through the Svelte part. Then I'll go through the Go part of that. And lastly, if demo or live demo gods allow, I'll try to show you the real deployment to the Google Cloud, and we'll see in action, like real deployment out there. So the project, first of all, I hope my screen is visible to you. I'll briefly like a glance through the application. Basically, it's not really doing anything useful. It's more like a demo application. So, for example, like here on your left, where we see like a typical layout, how the Svelte application is organized. And if you use Svelte independently, so without SvelteKit, usually you do it with Vite, and you kick off your development server. This is how you develop. But when it comes to deployment, now you're going to handle that. But usually with SvelteKit, you also covered here. But if you use Svelte separately, you have to decide how you're going to deploy it. So in this particular demo application, it's very simple. You have, like, as I said, typical layout. You have your main entry point, app Svelte, in index HTML, like a typical shell of the single page application and some use styles. It's currently empty. And for example, here I have one extra page, if you like, called about. Again, with the same layout, you have your Svelte file, you have your main TS, where you mount your application, and your HTML file as in like a shell point of your application, typical stuff. And because the current approach, how we're using Svelte here, is a bit unusual, like comparing to the typical way of using Svelte. Imagine it this way. Each page is essentially a standalone single page Svelte application. Yeah, they all don't know about each other. They can link to each other using the anchor tag, but essentially they're independent Svelte application. And because Vite, which is packaging the Svelte application, is using rollup, you can register multiple endpoints to build your Svelte application. For example, if we take a look here at the rollup, Vite config, there is a section rollup option, and in this particular 4 lines, as you can imagine, as you can see, we are registering all the entry points, essentially all our SPAs written in Svelte into our application. The rest is just the technical details, and because the source is available, you'll be able to take a look. But for the point of the presentation, it's not that important. Going back to our Svelte side of the application, you also have your typical folder with components. For example, the counter, like a very simple standard counter application. We'll see it in action in a moment. And another component I wrote as a experiment, which uses the external API to query the IP address, basically to show off like the fetching data from the page. But again, it's very standard. I guess you did it multiple times when you used Svelte as the UI library. So this is this Svelte part of this. So we have our Svelte application, we build it, we package that. Now we need to deploy it. This is where the second part begins. Like how we're going to deploy it and serve all our files, JavaScript files, HTML files, static assets, like pictures. And now we're going to look at the server side of this. It's called, it's just, because it's a simple application. It's just one file, main.go. And if you're not familiar with this language, that's fine. Well, it's very simple demo application. I'll go through it very in a way that you'll be able to understand it. So, like for example, in the main function, we do some standard rituals to kick off the web server. We start the file server to serve static assets. We register some additional routes, like the root of your application, some get on the /about, on /health, /IP. It's our internal APIs. It's pretty much typical, like you do it in Node, for example, with Express or whatever server you like. And but I'll explain in a second what all these things mean. And the interestingly, like you would ask me, why would you bother with all this stuff? Like, why don't you use SvelteKit as it's recommended by the design of this stack? That's the fair question. But here, I'll show you that the whole application with your static assets, with your pages, JavaScript, CSS, the server will be built into a single statically linked, very tiny binary, the executable, which you can either deploy as a container in any platform you want, or you can just copy it through SSH to your VPS, your virtual private server, and run it there. And that's it. You don't need anything else because, for example, for SvelteKit, you would probably use like a Vercel as a managed solution. It's a very good thing. But in this case, you have way more flexibility where and how you're going to run it. And let's start touching the code a little bit, and we'll start from the beginning, like how we're going to build it. First, we'll take a look at the development mode of this project, because in Svelte and SvelteKit, we all like our developer experience, how to reload, which actually comes from Vite, not from Svelte itself, but it comes as a package, so we all love it. So, and I didn't want to compromise here as well with this experience. So now I'm going to start my development environment. Don't feel intimidated about what this all means. You'll see it in a moment. So as you can probably recognize something familiar with this, so here we see I'm using Bun as the runtime environment, but you can use Node or Dino. It doesn't really matter. So we can observe that we actually hit Vite to package and build our Svelte application. And then we start Go, which starts listening and serving our WebSocket, our web server. And now, I mean, because we are listening on this page, if I go to my browser and if I hit my local thing here, well, this is the application. I know, as I said, it's not really kind of interesting in a way like what it's doing. It's not the whole point of this presentation, but it can demonstrate like your counter works. You can click on this button and it will show you your IP address as a demo of fetching external APIs. You can go to the page about, yeah. Oh, it's nice gopher. Oh, it's kind of nice visual effect. It shows you the page data and you can go back. That's how it works. But when you actually build SPAs, the question which remains is like, how you gonna do your data load? Because SvelteKit gives you this nice capability of doing data loading on a server. Yeah, when like it comes in the form of pre-rendering or server-side or hydration. So we need to do kind of the same thing, right? And it's not exactly the same. It's gonna have its own like a details. But if we go back to this page, and if I open the source, actually, let me approach it from the slightly different angle. So if we look at, for example, the page in about, yeah, what we can observe. This is a typical Svelte layout. You have your script, you have your main template part. I'm not using styles. Like a little bit, it doesn't matter. But usually, when you use SvelteKit, through the through the data load, you can approach your page data somewhere here. But because we are using Svelte as a UI library, we don't have this loading capability. So instead, what you can do, you can access this special property called underscore data. The name is not really relevant, it's just selected being unique in some sense. And then, as you can see, I'm stringifying this. So basically, I'm using it. And the same is on the app Svelte. Again, my JavaScript code or TypeScript code is using this data. And the question is where it's coming from. Yeah, because here we don't have anything. But if we look at the page, at the source of the page, you see this page data and the field called prompt with the value comma estas. Okay, and now you see this actually, this data property is populated. Yeah, it contains this comma estas. And if we go to the about page, for example, with the ID, and if we look at the page source, we see that the data is populated with different data. So now you may kind of start seeing similarities with SvelteKit. So SvelteKit hydrates your JavaScript with some data on the server side, but here we do it in a slightly different way. We populate this field, and then your JavaScript can use it and like do rendering and all this kind of stuff. But the important thing that this is injected on a server. Yeah, so imagine that your server side can access to all your databases, all your hidden keys and everything which you cannot expose on the JavaScript side. So, and here you only see the results. If we go back to our Go code, again, if you don't really understand Go, well, just try to understand basics, because here it's important to understand the concept rather than just particular details. For example, these are handlers in the Go sense. For example, the handler sitting on the root like index, and the handler sitting on the /about. And for example, on the /about, what's going on? This is the handler. And this handler is being called when you access /about page. And now you can see some things like you remember that greeting field, the ID field. So this is where this is actually like a similar load function which you have in SvelteKit, but this is how it's implemented in Go here. And now we have another interesting, it's not middleware, it's rather the wrapper called root or route. And this is where all this magic happens. Yeah. So this root function is called every time when you need to render your SvelteKit, Svelte SPA. And as you can, let me hide this really quick. World wrap. Okay, so we can see it. Now you can find some interesting points here. You see like head tag and then script window data. So essentially here, what's going on? This code is looking for the head tag, and then after this head tag, it injects some data in the form of JSON, which was serialized here for a particular page. And as you can see here again, you see that we injected some special script tag after the head. So the whole point I'm trying to deliver here is that this window underscore data underscore is populated by the server, by the Go code on every single page, specifically to every single page. So for each page, so the data can be different for the page. And another cool aspect of that, because in SvelteKit or Vite concretely, when you develop something, you have this hot reload business. And when you are running locally, you save your files, it automatically rebuilds everything, your data is reloaded, your server is refreshed, plus your web browser as well, refreshed as well. For example, here, if I change this particular file and I'm adding some comments, now I'm going to save it. And now you see how it's interesting it's going on. It's rebuilding everything. It repackages everything. It restarts the server, and actually this page is reloaded as well. And I can show you, I can prove you that it's actually how it works. So similar to Vite, I'm running the special in the development mode, the special endpoint through the WebSocket. And when it's connected to my server as well, and when my server is restarting, this injected JavaScript detects this fact, and then when restart finishes, it reload the page. Let me show this in a second. So I'm going to save the file to force everything to rebuild. And then the server will be restarting, and the restart takes like a second or so. So, and you'll see here in the console how this JavaScript page will reload itself. So I'm going to save, and I'm switching here. The connection is lost because the server is being restarting, and then it's live again. How cool is that? So essentially here, I'm having exactly the same developer experience as we have in SvelteKit. The automatic rebuilds, it's not that complicated, but importantly, the reload of the page as well. And the way how it works, if we look at the source, this little snippet, custom snippet is injected to every single page doing this magic page reload. Right. All right. So what we have to cover now, because I think I still have some time, I'll show you a few things why you may consider this project in the first place. So, ls. What does it all ls mean here? All right. Executable. Where is executable? Okay. So when you use SvelteKit with Svelte, and when it comes to deployment, now you kind of deal with all this complexity of, well, I need to package Node or Dino or Bun. I need to produce the probably the Docker image, package all it together, deploy it somewhere. Of course, if you're using something like the cell with zero deployment, that's fine. It deals with this for you. But if you have to do it yourself, well, you have to write quite complicated Docker files to build all that. So, but in this particular approach, Go language and Go toolchain concretely has its very unique, to some extent, and very useful capability to build your application into a single, literally single binary. It packs all assets all together. They're all packed and compact into one file, and that's it. You don't need anything else. All your application is sitting in this one nice executable. And in this case, for example, if I take a look at the size of my executable, you see, it's only this. It's almost like a 10 megabytes, and that's it. Everything. Images, JavaScript, pages, the server itself, it's all packed there. I don't need anything else. I copy this file across, I run it, and that's it, and it works. We're getting there. Now, I'll show you how to deploy this weirdly looking application somewhere to the field. to the Google Cloud in particular. So now it's running, currently it's running on my local host. Okay, fair enough. But we're going to put it out there. And let's do a few things to do that. It's actually pretty simple. First, we do the build. Okay. So again, we are not using the hot reload anymore. We build it for deployment. Again, the steps are the same. We package our Vite part, then we do build for our Go application, and then we produce the Docker file. Fair enough. But if I show you the size of the container I've just built, take a look at this, 7 megabytes, and that's it, nothing else. Okay, now we're going to tag and push. We're going, okay, let me open my Google Cloud account really quick. Yeah, this is a typical, if you're not familiar with Google Cloud, don't worry. I know Google Cloud, that's why I'm using it, but now we're going to do it live. So currently my container is built locally, and then I'm going to push it. And because it's so tiny, yeah, it's gonna happen really quickly. So let me wait a little bit. So now it's pushing it, it's connecting, and I think in a few seconds it's gonna be over there. All right, let's go to my Google Cloud, reload. Here we go, and you'll see that just now, let me move this away, this label indicates I just pushed this application. So now it's sitting in the repository of Docker images in the cloud. And again, the size of the image is crazy. It's so tiny. And the last step, we're getting there. We're going to deploy this application to the hosting platform called Google Run. It's essentially the service to run containers. I'm going to create a new service. I'm going to give it a name. Svelte Go. I'm going to pick up the image I've just pushed. I'm going to allow it to be public, because in GCP you can restrict, but I'm going to make it public, and that's it. And now we put create, and a few moments with the magic of Google Cloud, what we're gonna have, come on, deployment. Yeah, it's green. So now this URL, this weirdly looking URL, because I don't have any domain, but this is the URL which GCP gave me. If I click on this, what I see, this is my application. So now we just deployed our tiny but full stack Svelte plus Go application to Google Cloud. And it's, again, operational in the same way. And I prove you that it's actually not the local run. If I click on get IP, it shows me this strange IPv6 address which Google Cloud gives me, but it doesn't matter. I'm just saying that this is actually running here on this weird URL, but it's in the cloud. It's not local. So in literally 20 minutes, we built our Svelte application with the fully fledged features of interactivity, which Svelte and SvelteKit, Svelte 5 in particular gives you. We built it, we tested it locally with a nice developer experience. We packaged that and we deployed it to Google Cloud. How cool is that? So yeah, I think I covered everything I wanted to cover, because I didn't really want to dig into particular like details of many things, but I would rather leave it in a way if we still have time or if there are questions I can answer. But yeah, I'm pretty much here. So we're done.
Yes, I'm back. I was struggling to
Right.
re-enable my webcam, but I was here. So I think this is pretty cool. And by the way, so personal comment. We also have some question, and I think you. I don't see your webcam anymore. Um, and I think you can also like remove your screen if you don't want to show any other code, so we can talk uh,
Yeah, I
between.
mean, is it? I'm not sure how. Yeah, do you see me? Okay.
I don't see you, and I see your screen still. I think I can
Uh,
move your screen.
oh, okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Okay, now I see you. So pretty cool, and interesting because I think this kind of gives a bit of an insight on, in general, how SSR and like data loading can work. Because at the end of the day, like this is very not much different from what SvelteKit is doing. Like obviously, SvelteKit is using Node um, instead of Go on the backend. But at the end of the day, like even if you open a SvelteKit application, you will see the same window.date underscore data inside your original payload that actually loads your data. And was one of my questions. Like technically, like you could build your application so that instead of having to access window underscore data, that is actually a prop of the component that is being mounted by your application, just like as an insight. And I think, and I don't know Go enough to know about, but I think it will also be interesting to actually package these to be a standalone dependency, so that basically it could become a sort of like SvelteKit in Go, some sort of things. Like you can have uh, some like uh, convention, just like SvelteKit does, to load files and load routes and stuff like that. And it can build a series of endpoints in your Go based on I don't know, a file system and stuff like that. So I think it's in general pretty cool, and I love the fact that this kind of gave us some insight on how to build a server side rendered framework. Server side rendering is probably a bit too difficult in a no-node environment, because Svelte does require like the right server rendered API. Like you kind of needs to use the render function from Svelte to be able to actually render a Svelte component that then is iteratable. But to build single page application, I think it's perfectly fine to do this kind of stuff, and it's very interesting
Well,
how
I
everything.
I need to say that I totally understand the point and the reason why it so nicely works with Svelte and SvelteKit, because obviously both parts use the same language, JavaScript. And so this is where this hydration is pretty natural.
Yeah,
But in like when Go talks to JavaScript and back, the common language they both understand is what? Is JSON,
yeah, yeah,
right? This is where you, if I want to technically it is possible to hydrate like SvelteKit is doing, but I need to parse like JavaScript on the Go.
yeah,
It's the whole point of this going away, because why, I mean, why you are fighting this the platform? You have to understand what you're signing up for. Of course, this is not 100% the same hydration and server-side rendering how SvelteKit does it. Absolutely, yeah, we understand that. But the whole point is actually some data are loaded on the server, right?
yeah.
This is where kind of
No, no. Again, I was like, I think it's a very nice demonstration, especially because like it kind of demonstrate how to do data loading with your own server, even if it's not a JavaScript one. My comment was just about like it would be
plus as
cool
well.
to
You
also
kind of
include hydration, but to actually hydrate a Svelte component, you need JavaScript to render that component, which is kind of annoying, but it would be cool. I think we also have some question.
Yeah.
Specifically,
Sure.
there is some question about out. Like, how would you cover out in such Go/Svelte stack? Like, what would be your preferred way to cover authentication in this mixed?
Authentication. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, by the way, you are actually I will answer this with the point which you brought like a second ago. You kind of said because SvelteKit is based on file-based routing, as we all know, right?
yeah,
But in Go, there is no such thing. Like there is a code doing everything in memory in a way you configure. All these routes, all these data parameters passing, they're all in the code. For example, your one page can be mounted to multiple routes because your router is very dynamic. So answering the question of authentication, well, in this case, you are on Golang realm. You need to understand how Go does it. There are plenty of libraries of all possible authentication, basic WebAuth, auth2, like a JWT, everything.
yeah,
But this is not about Svelte anymore
yeah.
because, well,
I agree.
Svelte is the UI part here. So
Yeah.
go.
In general, like I think, I think there is an answer to this question in the chat. That is, I think this could still use cookie and session for out, and that's exactly true. Like authentication is not something related to an UI framework; is more about your server framework. And at the end of the day, authentication is just a flow. Like that is not tied to a single language. So you can implement
Mm.
OAuth with Go, you can implement OAuth with Node and stuff like that. So pretty nice. There is also another comment about it would be cool to use ASP.NET instead of SvelteKit. And I think, again, it's very interesting because obviously this project is using Go, but you could do literally the same thing with ASP.NET, using ASP.NET to build your index.html, to build your page, to serve your page, and do the same data loading trick that you did. So again, it was very interesting. There is also another comment. I mean, there is a comment about like data is not type safe and it's blocking. I mean, I think like the type safety of SvelteKit comes from a CLI that generates the types under the hood. So nothing is stopping you to actually generate something like that in Go. At the same time, I kind of like, it was like generating types and stuff like that. It's something much more complex than just creating a single page application. I don't know. What do you think
Do
about
you
it?
do you see my screen?
Yes, I do.
Do you see my screen back?
I do.
Okay, this is actually I was going to answer this because I just forgot to mention. So technically, you still have like some capabilities of abusing this global DTS. And for
Mhm.
example, here my data is like a generic type, but I can like specialize it a little bit.
Yeah.
And basically, my underscore data underscore will be typed to some extent. Of course, the Go side, yes, wow, it's a different technology and you have to type it separately, but still you can have some safety. Still it's not completely lost.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as I was saying, basically, what you could do is inside, like on the Go side, you could generate automatically this .d.ts so that it's actually typed and type every single route. But I mean, that's a whole
Yeah,
different project, in my opinion. There's also another
yeah.
question by their team that say I also have a repo for that, and it compiles a SvelteKit project static and injected via embed into a binary. Less config required, runnable without Docker, same size, just use static provider. I think like this is definitely an interesting thing, but it's missing uh, like it's missing something, and it's the fact that if you don't want to use SvelteKit at all, like you just want to use Svelte as a UI library, like having a SvelteKit project and build it as a static adapter with static adapter could be a way to do it. And also, it could be a way to do it if you want a static website. In this case, he's also demonstrating data loading, which is like much more interesting because you could technically fetch from a database based on the user cookie and provide like server side rendered data for the page that is a bit different for a static provider. And Manuel, which is also like one of the maintainer of SV, the CLI for thing, that it's also giving you like it's saying it's a great exploration. There are obviously a billion more things to consider to make it this production ready, but this is a great starting point. Good job. Okay. There's also like a comment from Raz T that say there is a way to do that. I don't know that what is referring to, but you can load Go plugins at build time as shared libraries. I don't know if like it gives
Well,
you.
my whole point was to avoid shared libraries.
Okay.
I wanted a single executable with no dependencies. It never breaks. Basically, the Docker image I produce, it's like a scratch type of the Docker image, if you know what it is. Basically, this container has nothing apart from the kernel and this executable, nothing else, zero, nada. Just that's it. But with Go, yes, plugins, it's all possible if you want this flexibility.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for presenting. I think it's a very nice approach. I think it's a very, it was a very instructive demonstration of, again, how to do data loading and stuff like that, even with a different language. So pretty cool. And thank you everybody for showing up. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this week in Svelte, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.